Hello everyone, I am Spicestrike and welcome to the Furry series. Today we'll be going over the painting process I've used several times in the past to give my characters stylized eyes I liked. It's very easy and you'll be surprised by the results. Also, I apologize for the switch up. The first episode I had to record with a different mic. Hello everybody, this is Spicestrike, and before we get started today, we're just going to go over a few notes here. Just starting out, I don't pretend to be good at painting eyes or digital painting in general. You can use any style you want with this method. I have prepared the following tutorial for those new to digital painting, as a means just to get your own unique eye in the form we need for the rest of the tutorial series. If you know what you're doing and prefer to paint your own style, I recommend following the start of the tutorial to know the canvas to eye proportion we need. After that, you can do as you see fit. After you create your first eye setup, you may want to browse additional digital painting tutorials to take your eyes to the next level. There are always step-by-step tutorials written and in video form for every skill level. You may decide that you want something along the lines of anime eyes. We're going to go ahead and learn something along these lines. It's pretty applicable and you can use a lot of the different techniques and tips and tricks to use however you want. And I feel like this is a really good starting place to begin, especially for how we'll be setting up the eyes in the following episodes. So I've already done this a couple times and have taken notes, and this is one of the eyes I've created, and we're just going to go ahead and start from scratch, and I will walk you through this exact process. So we're just going to go ahead and create our first document here, and feel free to copy these settings. If you want a better eye for close-ups, you may want to consider going to 8K, but for now, and for most cases, 4K eye is just fine. The eye is usually not going to be the final product. It's going to be in the final product, and the space it takes up usually isn't going to be more than 1,000 or so pixels anyway. And it's not going to be zoomed in usually. So you can go higher. You don't need to. For now, we're just going to stick with 4K. So this is our new document, and for funsies, this is for Krita users, we're going to record a time-lapse as we go, just because it might be fun to see the end result, especially for you. It's really simple. You don't need to worry about any kind of memory requirements, like it is recording for hours. It'll only record if it detects a change, and it's really simple. So first, just to do it, we're going to go up to Settings, Dockers, and then you click on Recorder so you see the check mark. The bottom right, it's going to pop up this little window. All the default settings are fine. And just to get started, you just press Record. And that's all you have to worry about. And once you're done, you just come back to this and you press Stop. First step is we're going to establish symmetry. We're going to do these two buttons up here. And usually all programs have some sort of vertical and horizontal. You should be able to find the equivalent if in another program if you're using it. I'm just going to go ahead and grab some sort of hard brush. And we're going to name this layer as limits. And what we're going to do is just going to put one dot in the middle, like right there. So what we're going to do is we're going to do some preliminary work. We're going to mark the halfway point between the edge of the document and the center. So you don't have to be exact. There's a reason for this, and it's kind of a science. And what we're going to do is pick a spot then from the center to this middle point, about 2/3 or 3/4. And you might be wondering, what is this for? The reason is when you shrink down the eye texture in like a 3D application, it'll repeat if you shrink it down too much. So the smaller you make the eye in this document, the smaller the eye can be in like a 3D rendering or on a rig, etc. If you make it too big, that's basically the smallest size eye you can have without running into repeating issues. So I typically like to be a bit conservative, and I will put it about 2/3 of the way to this middle point from this point. Like that. So once we're there, we're just going to go ahead and from these points, just draw a box. Doesn't have to be perfect. So that's our first step, is establishing this eye area. We're going to just put this at 20% opacity on the right-hand side, 20%, and just go ahead and lock this layer. So I've gone ahead and created a new layer underneath the limits, and lock your limit layer. We're going to call this new one outline. So eyes come in different shapes and forms. Normal eyes might be circular, and that's how we would draw it if it were circular. Furries, they like to do their eyes a bit more cat-like. So you might see something more oval-like, or something like that. We'll just go ahead and use that shape. Now we're just going to make the iris. Like so. Don't worry about any kind of irregularities or unevenness. This is just a guide as well. So we're going to go ahead and bring this opacity to 20. And we're going to lock this layer as well. And now that we're kind of done with that limit layer, we can just disable it for now. Now we are going to do some group layer creations. And it's a bit of a pain, but you know, it's no big deal. It doesn't take that much time. We're going to go down here, create group layer, and make it below outline. And we are going to call this just painting. From here, we are going to create 4 more groups. So just go ahead and just add them. Be sure you don't stack them all on each other. Make sure they're all parented to just painting. Okay, we have our 4. The bottom one, we're just going to call eye whites. Next one, you're going to call pupil / outlines. Then this one is iris. And then the top one is specularity. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and go to the iris layer, and we are going to add a transparency mask. Now, sadly, it starts out as white. We want this to be a black transparency mask. So we can either just take a paint bucket and just dump it like so with the black color, full opacity, and we could just dump it and turn it black. Or if you want, you can go up to tools, or no, filter, just invert, or control I, which is much faster. So just do control I, it turns black. We're going to be making a lot of these, so you'll probably want to memorize this. I'll try to also say it, and you should see the key press stroke at the bottom center of the screen. So in iris, we make this transparency mask, and we're just going to go ahead and call this the iris mask. Now we're going to do basically the same thing for the pupil and outlines. We're going to go to add transparency, control I. We're going to call this one outline mask. Okay, we're going to go ahead now and decide what color we want our eye. We can change this at any time, so don't fret on it too much. We're going to come down to here, drop down menu, add fill layer, and I'm just going to go ahead and pick a very orangey color. That is my favorite color. Make it nice and bright and saturated, and just press OK. Nothing's going to happen since we have a black mask. We are now going to go ahead and copy and paste this layer twice. The bottom layer we're going to leave as iris color, and then the other layers we're just going to put iris color shaded, and then the top one is iris color lit. So make sure you have the same exact order. And what we're going to do is we're going to right click on properties on the lit, and we're going to decide what the color is when light hits whatever we designate as lit as being much brighter. You want this to be pretty bright, almost white, but not quite. You still want it to be somewhat colored. And now the opposite for shaded. We're going to decide on a darker color, like that. Now come down to pupil and outlines, create a new fill layer. We're going to go ahead and pick a very dark version of our color. So almost black, but not quite. Now what we're going to do is call this pupil / outline color. We're just going to leave that. So we're going to go ahead and grab some sort of paintbrush. I'm just going to use a generic hard brush. And make sure we're on white and full opacity. We are going to go to this should actually be named pupil / outline mask. And we're just going to color this in. So once we get the general shape, we can actually just come over here and take a paint bucket and then just go over the scene like that. Make sure you get the outline edge as well. Don't need to be too perfect. Now we're going to go down to the iris mask. And now we're going to approach the iris. For now, we're just going to come over here and disable pupil and outlines because we're just painting in the iris now. So what we're trying to do is go within the outline line like this. Just do it sloppy first, and then you can fix any parts that are not so good. Don't have to be super perfect, you just want the general idea. You don't want too many lumps. That was a lump. And once we do that, then we're going to go ahead and do the same thing here, but in the outline, like that. Then we'll just go ahead and paint bucket the rest. That way we can just clean up these seams. Like that. So once you do that, go ahead and re-enable your pupil and outline. And you should see something that looks along the lines of this. I don't quite like how sharp that is, so I'm just going to just fixing this a little bit. Okay, that is good enough. So now we can go ahead and just disable this. It served its purpose, and now we got our own new guidelines. So now we're going to go ahead and come back to the iris lit color, and we're just going to go ahead and add a transparency mask. Now remember, it's white. We need to invert it with Control I. Color will change of the eye. That is fine. Come down to the shaded. You have the transparency mask. Invert it. Now, this is our base color eye, and the colors that changed were the other colors that were on top. That's fine. Okay, so now what we're going to do is come down to the eye whites group, and we are going to add 2 fill layers. This one will just have be, yeah, we'll just do something. We'll just do it on the fly. We'll do this. We're going to create another fill layer. And if you do this and you want the same color, like we need something similar, just go ahead and press the eyedropper and you come over here and select that. Gives us the exact same color. However, we want, once we select these 2 colors, the top one to be a much darker one. Maybe like that, yeah. Now, for this top darker color, we're going to go ahead and call it eye whites shaded color. And then other one, eye whites color. We only need these 2. For this one, we're going to go ahead and add a transparency mask and then invert it. All right, so we're going to go and find some sort of soft airbrush and make sure we're on a white color. And I'm just going to go very light. When in doubt, go very light. 5%. And we're just going to paint a little shadowing behind the eye. Like so. I won't go too crazy. Something like that is fine. Yeah, that's fine. That might be a little bit too much. I undid one. Yeah. So the effects should be visible, especially if you flicker on and off. All right. Now we're going to turn off vertical symmetry here. So just go ahead, turn that off. We are going to go to the iris color lit mask. We could change the name, but it really doesn't matter since this only goes to this. So we can just assume that it belongs to that. We don't need to name it. So we are going to, on the iris lit transparency, using a 5% airbrush, very lightly brush in some strokes here. What we're going to do is simulate eyes in like the light, where the light shines down, and the light's going to be more visible here because maybe there's some sort of brow, ridge, horn, fur, head, hair blocking some light up here. So there's going to be a natural gradient going down. And we could technically use a gradient tool, but we would have to erase some. So we're not going to do that. We're just going to take the brush and just start doing some strokes downward. And we'll see what that looks like if I flicker it on and off. And so you can see the effect. We need it to be a lot stronger. So we're just going to keep painting. And what I've done, I've got a pattern where I start at the top and do a stroke. And I go a little bit, I restart, but not quite as high up, and keep going. And that allows it to be like a natural gradient where it's stronger down here. Because as you keep on dragging the brush, you're dragging over other areas you've gone before. But this area is just going to be less and less the higher you go up. So we're just going to keep doing that. And I'm now going to make the brush a bit smaller, so that way I can show the height of the eye. And I'm going to go a little bit more up here as well, so we can start seeing like a depth to the eye. Like that. Yeah, I think that once we have some of the full color down at the bottom, we'll slowly start doing that. You don't want to use the same brush size. You want to get smaller and smaller. Should be almost full color down here compared to up here. It should be very light, and this color down here should be almost this color exactly. So once we do that, we can move on to the next step. Now we're going to do the opposite. We're going to go down to the iris color shaded, this transparency. And we're just going to, just the center part for now, start brushing in. Now we see what that effect looks like. Yeah, definitely has darkened. I think I'll bump this up just for like 30% opacity just to make sure that I starting to get this to be darker in here. Now we will do the outside. Be much bigger. We're going to go back to 5% opacity. And like how the eye got brighter the further down you went, it's going to be the opposite, where it gets darker the further up you get. So we're just going to do the same. We don't need to start all the way down here, but I'm going to start right here and then run it up. Once I do, yeah, a little bit more. This part up here needs to be pretty evident that it's darker. Then we're just going to go ahead and brush in some of the underside of the iris, because this is going to be more in shade as well. And this part should be pretty dark as well. And so now what we're going to do is go up to the iris color lit transparency mask, and we're going to make sure we have a black brush and just start painting away some of this light. There's a bit too much here, so we're just going to slowly work some of this out with a light opacity. Now we're going to go ahead and just add some more detail back, little lines like this, to really highlight the height of the eye here. Go ahead and go down to the brush panel and select the Blender Blur brush. Right there. Set it to about 5% opacity. with our blur brush, we're just going to take a small radius. We're just going to go up to the top and start working our way down and blurring the border slowly. Don't worry if it's not perfect. It's a little bit irregular. Now we're just going to go over to our pupil and outline mask. And we're just going to do the exact same thing. We're just going to slowly just blur it out. Go ahead and go down and search for the smear brush, blender smear, and go to the iris mask. And the way that this is going to work is that your opacity is going to determine the length of your smear. And so we're just going to try it out at 25 and go to the border of the iris. There's two borders, one on each side, inner and outer, and just start going back and forth and smear that edge and give the appearance that there are strands. Make sure you're always pointing towards the center. You don't want to keep on doing the same angle. Notice how all these strands are, as they go, pointing towards the center more rather than, straight back and forth. You do have to make sure you think about it while you do it. Slowly changing my stroke to point towards the center. Now horizontal. Break it up into pieces, it's fine. Angling more towards the center, more and more. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go to the lit transparency. And we're going to do the exact same detail as we did before, but this time it's going to be on the center. So if you try it out, you'll notice that we get some smearing and it's not very noticeable. Let's bump up that opacity. And now it's more noticeable. You can do the same thing to a less noticeable effect with the shaded layer. So we go to the shade layer and try this out. You can kind of see it's adding a little bit, not much. So now what we're going to do is just break up some of this subtle detail with some finer detail that's more noticeable. And bring up the opacity, and we'll go to the iris mask and the color lit transparency mask. And we're going to start doing some more fine strands. As you can see, they're a little bit more noticeable. Maybe they could be more noticeable. Try it out. Yeah, so just start stroking them in. And they're still a bit subtle. Now we can kind of go crazy with these. Add some nice detail. Oh. The whole point is to layer detail. We have put a lot of broad strokes underneath it. Now we can put some smaller ones that are more noticeable on top. Do a little bit with the shaded mask as well. And now we'll go down to our brushes and we will find ourselves a splat brush, the Water Sea Special Splats. Go to 5% opacity, rather large size, and we'll go to our eye white transparency mask. Yeah, the eye white one. And the idea is just to slowly start splotching in some detail. Just to give a sense of movement when the eye moves. And the eye isn't perfect. And this isn't too weird. You see this type of thing a lot in furs. Do some broad strokes and then we'll probably continue and do some small ones. So what we'll do now is just do a few passes at a smaller brush size. Keep the opacity low and just run it over the outline. I'm just scrubbing it in right now. Once you get kind of the basics, then you can start doing some more clicks. And just kind of dab at it. More smudging. Yeah, looks good. What we'll do now is we'll go to the specularity group and we're going to start getting that ready. So go ahead and add a new color fill layer. I'm gonna pick a cool color, like a cooling, like a blue. Yeah, that's fine. We'll add a transparency mask to the fill layer. And Control I to invert. I'll probably bring that opacity to, opacity to 15, or 10 to 15. And then we'll be working in the transparency mask. Alright, so we'll work on the specularity. Make sure you turn off symmetry. And we're going to go down to the brushes and find ourselves the basic one brush. And there it is. Use that with white coloring, full opacity, max brush size. We're just going to go ahead and put a little dot here. I don't like that color. That's better. And then what we'll do is we'll get a black brush to subtract some from this. And there we go. Get a big white brush and just go ahead and lower that down. Put some more dots on the eye. Oh, I'm in the wrong layer. Okay, this is a big mistake and it'd be kind of common to accidentally work in the fill layer. So we're just going to undo all this real quick. Yeah, I'm just going to undo it. So I'm turn this to a white color. Back size, white color, transparency mask. Not the fill layer. That's so common. It happens all the time. If it looks all weird, that's probably because you're working in a fill layer and not the actual mask. So make sure it's the mask. Then invert the color to turn this into an eraser. Erase it. Go back to white. Smaller brush. Go ahead and make our dots. That looks about, yeah. A couple more. And then we'll want to blur this, and to do that, we will go up to the, that's up in the tool. filter, blur, Gaussian blur. And for the most part, you can go pretty crazy with it. Maybe not that crazy. I think, yeah, 15 to 25, I think, is the sweet spot. Yeah. That looks good. Not satisfied with the color. Let's change that. Slightly blue. Melts in a bit too much. Let's change the color to see if we can make it pop out as a tad bit more green. We'll just do something with it and just leave it. We'll come back to that color later. Alright, so now we can start working with some additional detail down to the brushes, and we'll search for the water C special splats brush, sponge. Go to our transparency mask for the iris color lit. About 25 to 30 opacity. The dot size is a bit complicated. You could use any dot size you technically like. And there's a lot of different brushes in here as well that you might want to try out for dots. But if you just start, screwing around, let's enable symmetry since we don't need to do this that much. And that's what it looks like. Do smaller, looks like that, not really noticeable. Go too big, that's what it looks like. So it's kind of hard to manage. I like the 100 to 150 range. You can also do the opposite of this as well. Just by going to the same, you can just do the same layer. And you can actually remove some of the lighting this way as well. If you want to break up some of the lighting, I'm gonna have to. I'm not going to in this case, I think. I'm gonna go in and re-enable and actually add my dots I like at the 150 size and just add some. No big deal, just get it over with. Add some there. I'll go ahead and remove some, I think. Like erasing some of this, erasing with the dots is what I mean. Now that we've approached the end, we can actually start tinkering with color choices and palettes and really get into the nitty-gritty of how we want this eye to look, or discover a brand new look. It's best to keep your mind open. So what we're going to do is go to one of these color fill layers. The iris color is the main eye color, and we'll just rotate around the color wheel to see what it kind of gives us, just to see some interesting looks. Of iridescent, that's a neat one. Kind of like the brighter look. Looks more glowy. Yeah. Okay, let's accept that. And we'll now do the shaded color and see what that gives us. Dark. Actually, let's go around the color wheel, see what it has. Ooh, that's interesting. I don't know why it reminds me of a peach almost. Let's do that, yeah, I like that. And now we'll mess with the lit color. This is where those tiny little strands really come into play with make or break it. Yeah, a brighter color, if you look at that, really makes it pop. We could mess with the specularity color. What? Oh, it's it's because I'm at full brightness. Couldn't tell what was going on. The specular color is a bit hard to determine what you might want. I'll just leave it as white instead. We'll just bump up the opacity to be more noticeable. Yeah, that works better. So now we could work with the eye whites. I think the darker does look better. Go down the color wheel to see what other options there are. Yeah, the cooler adds more contrast to the much warmer eye. And I bet if we were to make this white, yeah, it blows that out too. So, but if it was darker, yeah, look at that. That definitely does. Yeah, let's make that darker. Just a little bit. Yeah, it's really changed the look of the eye. Alright, so that basically concludes the tutorial. If we want to now figure out how to... Oh, I just realized I have not saved. Better save this. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. And if we want to stop our time lapse, we just press the stop button right there. And that way our time lapse will be exported to a folder. Images will be exported here. And as we see, here is all of our steps that we've taken to get to where we are now. All small little files, don't take up much size. That's all for this episode, everyone. Be sure you watch the next episode where we'll cover how to easily make an expressive eye in 3D from this very image we just created.